Andy Andrist.
Yep.
Did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah, you did. Andrist. I think so. That's how I've always heard it or said it.
That's hard to mispronounce that one. Mm-hmm. Now, we are in Eugene, Oregon, and this is your hometown.
This is, yeah.
Or what's the way? It's somewhere close to here, right?
I mean, this is where I was brought up and went to high school, but I've been here for long enough to qualify as my hometown, 30 plus years.
You're Mr. Oregon. You've never left. You never went to live in New York or L.A.?
Yeah, no, I lived in L.A. for the shortest of times, so not really living in L.A., but squatting on the lot is what I did when I worked on the Man Show.
With Stanhope.
Yeah, I lived with.
Now, from my impression, you're like Doug Stanhope's best friend.
He says that, and I would agree, but
I would agree.
Yeah, but I had a bad track record with a best friend drowning back in the day. Oh, it was like so I never.
But he never gave you a stupid nickname. Because all of his friends he's given stupid nicknames. So right? Because you never been you've never been chili dog or hot sauce or
but on the Man Show,
corn dog or anything like that. So I think that in Doug's world, that's a pretty high compliment.
I guess so. I named myself when I worked on the Man Show, so maybe I preemptively did that. But I got there and they'd had a caricature guy, and Craig Fitzsimmons had Fitz dog above his desk. So, and I was the new guy. I got hired. The show was in progress, so I wrote on a paper plate A-Train like you would in a camp area to the A-Train family. But I wrote A-Train and I put it down, and I was like, that's my name from here on out, or whatever I pronounced it. That's who I am, and it kind of stuck.
It was Doug Stanhope and Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people were pissed off at that show. Like, do you think that show could exist now with because I remember people got upset at that, and that was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, but there was there were still standards in I remember I tried to get a glory hole thing in there. It was to be like a beer ad, like Man Laws, but a glory hole where a guy would say what he did to his friend that was shitty that he regrets, but he wouldn't know he's talking through a glory hole. So there was still that, they were holding back on a few, and then always, Sunny in Philadelphia had a glory hole thing a few years later.
You think they copied that?
No, but but it was just seemed like, if we can't push that boundary on the Man Show, and then it was, and then it was on like a sitcom, it was like they really kind of they held whatever line there was still to hold. There was ladies in New York who would, for instance, we had one that was called, it was try to prevent yourself from getting an erection, but we called it Make Me Hard, and they said, no, you can't call it that. And then it was, so last minute change. The only people who really had to fucking worry about it was art department. So it's like, we can't call it Make Me Hard now. We got to call it Make Me Stiff. So
that's dirtier.
Yeah. So those kind of things. It's not
like Give Me a Boner. I mean, Make Me Hard.
Right. It felt like they were just throwing penalty flags at stuff just because they were going to be overrun eventually. So,
the thing I remember about that show was Stanhope had his mom on talking about her sex toys.
Yeah.
And I remember people getting all upset about it, and that's a pretty fucking honest conversation to have with your mother.
She hit my that as a writer on the show. I felt like, oh, that's it. As I gave her a line, it was like an American Idol type of spoof but it was Who Wants to Be a Porn Star? So it would be like a guy auditioning, and then she would be like the critic. And I got Miss Doug's mother to say, I wouldn't dump slop in I wouldn't mop up slop in a jack shack. Something like that. But she said it perfectly.
Right.
As a writer, it's always nice when the actress,
delivers
does it exactly like it, and they got a big laugh. And she's, and then I would. That was one thing I was good at pitching, things that could come out of her mouth perfectly.
So let's talk about this kind of notorious incident that happened between you and I. Doug Stanhope used to put on these yearly parties in Death Valley.
Yep.
At this place called Panamint. Mm-hmm. And it was like, there was like a little hotel. It only had like 8 rooms.
Yeah. Very Scooby-Doo, end of the road type of feeling.
And it was, brutally hot.
Yeah.
And all these Stanhope fans and friends and comedians went out there.
Yeah. The first few years, it seemed like it was mostly comedians. And
it sounded like a really fun thing, you know? Yeah. So I went one year with Paul Provenza, and I was not one of the lucky people to get a hotel room. So for like the 2 or 3 nights that I was there, I had to sleep in a car.
Oh man!
And it was very uncomfortable, and it was horrendous. And waiting for that brutal heat to pass.
Yeah.
I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah, people die
and everything.
Die into those conditions.
So. But it was fun, you know. I remember he had the music from this band, from Finland.
Matoid.
Yeah, Matoid. And I got a couple of his CDs, and when they would play at night, it was fun. And then there was a stand-up stage, and it was a really fun, small, inclusive, comedy party, Friends of Doug type thing. And I did mushrooms one night.
Yeah.
And mushrooms, you need to be outside, and so, I'm around friends, and my mushrooms are hitting, and I forget how this happened, but you and I were talking about, because you're from Eugene, I think we had a conversation about Nike.
Phil Nye.
The fact that the shoes were from
Prefontaine. Yeah, you admired my. Oh, they were.
You had a nice pair of Nikes on or something, I think I complimented you on them.
Yeah.
So then I don't know what you were on. If you were on mushrooms or whatever.
Mushrooms, mescaline, cocaine.
Okay, yeah, it was a cocktail.
Yeah,
because I remember that was like the year like Doug and some other people were mixing cocaine with mushrooms.
Oh yeah, we snorted.
And I think Stanhope even did a bit about it.
Mocaine.
Right, and I always looked at my mushroom experiences as like kind of a Native American sacred ritual, not to. So like I'm having my moment, I'm feeling great, and it's the desert, the stars, and then like an hour or two after you and I had this conversation about your Nike shoes that I had admired, you couldn't find them.
The shoes went missing.
And
I was tripping. And
so you come up to me, and you're like very serious, and you're very distraught. I mean, because you're on a cocktail of narcotics,
right? And I coupled with. I was going to New York to tape the Down and Dirty Jim Norton show, and I had these shoes, and I was like, they were in the back of my car.
And so you were like, I'm going to wear those shoes.
But I'm going to wear those shoes when I go to New York.
Yeah.
And anyway, and then.
But I think we had in the conversation, and I told you I'm an Adidas guy. And I told you, I don't like Nikes, but I really like that pair of Nikes that you have. And I'm like adamantly an Adidas dude.
Yeah.
So then
we're both representing.
So you come up to me like an hour or two later, you're distraught and you're very serious, and you're like, hey man, have you seen my shoes? And you're like all upset.
Yeah.
Like really upset. And then you're like, did you take them? And for some reason, you got it in your head that I had taken your shoes.
Anyway, we had that conversation. They went missing, and I was tripping. And then they may have even been, I may have just not overlooked them in my car.
Yeah.
But I do remember focusing on that. And then
and so all night, you keep coming to me.
Relentless.
Hey, man.
Yeah. Like Columbo.
You got to give me my shoes back. And you're like, I'm serious, Tom.
If
give them back.
If Columbo had just been looking for his shoes. And one more thing. Well, can I get the shoes, please?
And I kept telling you, Andy.
They turned out.
I don't wear fucking Nikes. I don't even think we're the same size. I didn't take your shoes.
Yeah. Anyway, they turned out. I wore them, and then I still got edited off of the show. So
which one?
On the Down and Dirty.
Oh. But you found the shoes.
But I did find the shoes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because, once every couple of years, I don't know if you go on a podcast or something and mention this story.
Yeah.
So, like once every couple of years, I'll get a wave of comments on my social media.
Give him his
hey,
shoes.
man, give Andy his shoes back. It's hilarious. It's like this. It's been a running joke for like 15 years.
Yeah, and they turned up the next day. So
or 20 years, however long it's been.
It was like the John Benet, but John Benet didn't turn. These turned up the next day. They were fine. Everything was.
But it was so funny because like you ruined my perfect mushroom high because you kept coming up to me and you wouldn't let it go.
And now hearing you did. Since we're gonna go there, you had a party foul earlier in the evening with a big pile of it was a big pile of cocaine by the standards of the Death Valley party.
Oh, you're talking about my Richard Belzer?
Yeah, with the Richard Belzer. Yeah, the Richard Belzer. Because there was a
I remember that
few
very
of us
distinctly.
crowded into like the size of a closet, with like 4 or 5 people in there, and we're looking for a place to put the cocaine down. And before we found a good place, Tom grabbed a pinch of it and then goes, "This is how Richard Belzer did it."
I just took a pinch and put it right in my nose.
Face, and then spilled a bunch, and I just remember thinking, man, I wouldn't want to party with Richard Belzer out here because there isn't enough cocaine. But I always found at that party.
Well, I'm sorry I did that.
No,
Andy.
this was the best cocaine at that party. Is
and I probably haven't. It's been many years since I did cocaine.
Yeah,
I've been sober for
a long
10
time.
years.
Yeah, I remember before, but this was the best.
So can I give you $50 to make up for what I spilled?
Not yet, but the widow Hedberg was sitting in a car, and I think Doug and me. It was at Aspen, Doug's convertible that was just parked there, and it was a year that we felt Hedberg's presence there. And anyway,
in Aspen.
No, this.
At Panama.
At Panama, yeah.
Oh, tell me about it.
Aspen. So we're all sitting in this convertible. There's 4 of us, and then this cocaine on a plate or whatever, and then a wind just came in and went, whoosh, and the cocaine just went up into the wind, and we're like, Hedberg's here.
He blew it.
Yeah, he did that. Like it was
probably telling you to stay away from that stuff.
You're probably saying, man, this is maybe dangerous. I'm looking out for you guys. But
when he just did cocaine, he was so fun to hang out with.
Yeah, very very fun dude. Very energetic.
I don't know if you ever got to hang out with him.
We were friends back.
I was pretty tight with him until he got into the heroin, and then he stopped being tight with everybody.
Junkies just when you're on the heroin, you tend to not want to hang, so it makes sense. But yeah, I remember hanging with him a bunch and. Did you worked with Lisa Young in Boise?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she was who was managing it when I was there.
Okay, but yeah, she booked me with Mitch a few times, and she just she goes, I thought you 2 weirdos would hit it off, and so that was before his signing at 3 Arts and all that stuff, but. And then hanging out with him during the Seattle competition was a lot of fun. So we were
the year he won it.
Yeah, it turns out he did. Yeah, he was like putting in minimal energies. We were always, drinking the wine and showing up late. And no matter who was judging, he would always turn out.
That's where I met Mitch. Was at the Seattle Underground, and he was with his girlfriend Jenna.
Okay.
Jenna, and. She came up to me after the show and she said, "My boyfriend is a big fan of yours. He's been on comedy for a couple years and he's too shy to come over and talk to you. Would you mind coming over and meeting him?" And I would go over and meet him, and he was so like shy and his hair's hanging down over his eye, and we went out and had some drinks afterwards. And he was so lovable.
Yeah.
In his like shyness, and like I fell in love with him. He was just such a beautiful man, a beautiful human being, and then that kind of persona on stage is he distilled that little shy personality on stage. It was so cute and lovable, and that was like exactly how I felt the moment that I met him.
Yeah, yeah. I remember just like ridiculous fun hanging out with him in the Idaho Hotel. there was a cookie place across the street, and we'd call down and we'd wait for somebody to sit on the bench, and then we'd call down to the cookie place and say, "Hey, man, I'm just a guy sitting on the bench, and I'd like to order some cookies, but I don't want to miss my ride."
Oh, that's funny.
It's just fun to do, and then and then the guy'd bring out some cookies and look up and shake a fist or whatever at us, and we'd hide.
Hedberg loved the telephone, and he loved to do like characters and practical jokes and pretend that he was other people. But I could always tell it was him. He wasn't, he couldn't disguise his voice that great.
Have you ever heard Stanhope go on one of his? I heard Doug. There was a pile up involving a rental car we had, and situation in Cincinnati. But Doug called up to complain, and he played an old Jewish character. And he was on the phone for, it was like a 2 or 3 hour phone call where he was locked into crabby old Jewish man. Well, very convincing, but he'd never, he was trapped all day. Hedberg wouldn't stay trapped in it very long.
So you tell me about your career. Did you started out in Oregon and Eugene, and then did you do the Northwest?
Yeah, I did a Coos Bay comedy competition for it was for organ donation money or whatever. It was a thing, and the guy who put on this competition was he grifted the money for this organ donor benefit, but it was
he kept all the money.
Yeah, he took off with the he promised like there was going to be this national headliner. It was oh fuck, what's his name? This legendary old comic, but he's not J. Wendell Walker. It was J. Wendell Walker where he was looted. But anyway, it was this competition, and I'd never done any comedy at all. I'd seen limited amounts of it. I was working, dropped out of college and was working at a mill in Coos Bay. And so,
like a lumber mill?
Yeah, pulling green chain,
What's that mean?
It's where they cut the log and it comes off steamy, and then it gets chopped into little pieces that you pull fast off a conveyor
It's a real
belt.
Ken Kesey, sometimes a great notion.
Yeah,
shit.
that kind of, it was the most active job in a mill to have is to pull in the green chain. So I did that after failing at college, and then I did a comedy competition there. Like I said, it was a grift, but the contest was a bunch of Portland comics, people who had been at it a while, and I was doing all new stuff, and went out and did 5 minutes and ended up making it into the finals, which was 15 minutes, which I didn't have 5 minutes, and then I didn't have 15 minutes, but I ended up getting third place in that. And then I started doing like triple gigs and things like that until I found a home club in Boise, Idaho. That I would do Harvey's Comedy Club in Portland, but I always felt like I was one step away from being fired, or it wasn't a place where.
Why? Like you were
it was
too
just
edgy?
a place. Yeah, there was just so much, and they didn't make you feel appreciated if it didn't go perfectly, And but the one thing about Harvey's that was great for me was the opening act would do 15 minutes in the middle, as opposed to doing 15 minutes up front and then a bunch of announcements, having other shit to remember. They'd have a feature do that. So that worked out. So I could just do 15 minutes in the middle. So that was really probably where I got, felt like I was good at comedy.
You got good at Harvey's.
Yeah, even though I hated, a lot of the other shit with Harvey's, it just seemed like kind of a soulless enterprise, and it was, because it was just a telemarketing, feed them the booze and the comics. They weren't selected because there would be, cool for the audience to have that experience. It was more, just kind of telemarketing sold the tickets, not comics. But and then I went over to Boise and was appreciated for what I felt like was my art. And that kept
I've always liked Boise, Idaho.
Yeah. It had enough conservative pushback, but not so much that you felt overwhelmed. I always I always liked the kind of makeup shit in Boise, and like a potato conspiracy was one of the bits I would do there.
What was it? What's that?
I would just make up that the guy how Simplot would drive around and he would hit homeless people and put them in the trunk of his car and leave potatoes. And it was just the whole idea of it was that people in Boise, Idaho made money off of potatoes, even though they knew they were causing obesity around the country.
Yeah.
But it was fun to do, and Lisa Young would let you do shit and laugh. Like when I remember,
she was kind of hot, wasn't she? She was really attractive.
She sounded like Penny Marshall, but she's kind of hot, in a ball cap kind of way.
Yeah,
for a lady. Yeah, and like she had a good laugh. You'd hear her laughing when I would hear Hedberg, and like Hedberg would hit some points where nobody else would laugh, and you'd hear her laugh. And she was like, these people just don't get how funny he is. And this was like the early days of it, and she was bring him in as
well, I
often
remember
as
when I
possible.
first saw Hedberg in San Francisco, because I didn't see him perform in Seattle. He had moved outside of San Francisco. He was him and Jenna were living in Pacifica.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember seeing him the first few times in San Francisco, and he was so kind of uncomfortable, shy on stage that it made the audience uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I saw him bomb like 2 or 3 times where I felt bad for the guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like I didn't see him for like another year. And something happened in that year where it just clicked, where he turned the nervous, uncomfortable energy into more lovable shyness, like the moment that I first met him.
Have you? Did you ever do the Elephant Castle in Bellingham, Washington?
No.
This was a part of the Seattle comedy competition, but that's where I first saw Hedberg, and he was. I guess he was just riffing. He'd seen the Karate Kid with the chick. With the Hillary Swank, and he was just talking about how ridiculous it was. But it was not a venue where you could kind of dick around and have fun with the crowd. They would just like turn on you in a second. He was going on about, and it was kind of fun. It was funny. But I asked. He was working with the guy who's the headliner at the Underground. And I go, "This guy's funny, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, no, he kills at a club." But he was just, I couldn't tell because it was that nervous shyness or whatever. But he was just talking about Hillary Swank and why would he want to punch the hottest chick at school? But it was, it was a place where they were serving wings.
Well, I did shows with, we co-headlined like twice in Houston, maybe 3 times.
Babbitt.
And with Babbitt. And it was like, and he told me, Hedberg set it up. And so his fame was rising, and he didn't have to take less money, but he did it so we could hang out. And it was like Led Zeppelin rolling into town.
Yeah.
We partied so hard. And the thing about Hedberg that I couldn't believe, on stage, he would say the hotel where he was staying at and his hotel room. Mm-hmm. He would give his real hotel room. And I'm like, what the fuck? And like... we would invite people back to the hotel. It was the Allen Park Inn.
Yeah, yeah.
But like he just...
What room?
Yeah. Like we loved hanging out with people. And then and he was fun. It's like, let's party and meet people after the show.
Yeah.
But it always blew me away.
Yeah.
He would always give his real hotel room.
Yeah, that was, towards the end, that he was so withdrawn because he was like he was... you ever hear the story about him buying the air conditioning unit for a dorm room? Mm-mm. Some kids showed up at this show and they talked about how, hot their dorm room was or whatever. And Hedberg showed up, at their dorm room with an air conditioning unit. So, it's a bummer he didn't get to enjoy that at the end game, that he was able to bounce around and do those kind of things because that, brings you joy to do that kind of shit.
Yeah. Well, in Acme, in Minneapolis, the Acme Comedy Club, in the dressing room, he thought the light was too bright. So he bought a lamp, and he turned off the overhead light, and it's still in there. It's the Mitch Hedberg lamp that's in the dressing room.
He's probably responsible for things working in condos. Troubleshoots them and buys the thing they need.
So what's the... what's the most ridiculous thing that ever happened to you on the road, or I guess you've done so many shows with Stanhope. I guess you've seen a lot of
there's
outrageous behavior.
A lot of those are written up in Doug's books. The first book, I think the person who checks on stuff is, you sure this is okay? And I think he used an alias for me in the first one. But I bring Pop up in a couple of them. One of them, what was pretty egregious, I would say, that involves somebody we already talked about, was Doug's mother went to Florida. Doug was going on a cruise, Comedy Central, some sort of cruise, and his mother was going with him. And I was in Florida to do some gigs before they left. But there was a lady that wanted to wrestle me in the club. So we wrestled and end up back at the place, whatever. But Doug's mother was sober. It's like I knew that she hadn't drank or done, I assume no drugs or whatever. But before the wrestling, Doug tells me between shows, he says, "We've got Coke and mother's holding." What? Well, not sure I even heard that right, but then I do bumps with mother in the bathroom.
Wow!
At the club, at the Improv there, and then I end up wrestling, end up with this lady back at the place, whatever. Doug comes down and he goes, "Mother's got the Coke," and so it would entail me going out of the room, and he goes, "Just go up like you are." So I was naked downstairs, and then I went up the stairs, and I figured, the chance that I run into somebody in the elevator and I'm naked going up to see this old lady to do cocaine, and I went and did blow with mother whilst naked up, and but that's probably not even the weirdest shit that went down with Doug. At all, but that's one that springs.
Well, did you ever get out of control on drugs? Like where are you? I know you're smoking weed now. So where are you at with?
I would go.
Like, how old are you now?
I'm almost 60.
Okay.
I'm 58. So and I don't really just like throw all in on drugs like I used to.
Yeah.
But when I would get into the really good cocaine or whatever. I would just lose. I would be like fucking Tasmanian devil type of, worked up and shit. But I would come home and this was what saved me. I would go on the road and party pretty hard. But I would come home and I had a daughter that I just put all my energy into that. And I would come home addled until I learned better. Like I would come home the first day or two, I would just be out of tune with what was going on. So then on the road, I would stop partying a day before I would come home because I wanted to.
So you wouldn't shake while you helped her with her homework
because come home sobbing, shaking the cocaine or whatever. And
how old is your daughter now?
She's 28.
Okay.
So she's great, and the energies I put into raising her have come back, 100-fold, so I don't regret, As far as comedy, there was times where I could have jumped on more things and been on the road or put more energy into my career, but I always just felt like, like I would just get so... I think alcohol and drugs and stuff was just a part of the mix for me. So when I would come back from the road, it was like a safety net, and there was never a comedy scene in my town, so I never had to, to mix the two. So
what's your relationship with your daughter? What's the most
great
rewarding things about
she's
being a parent? Because I never got to do that.
She wanted to be an ice skater when she was little, and then she pursued that.
Tanya Harding from Oregon.
Yeah, no, she actually had one of Tanya Harding's coaches for a while because my daughter snapped her ankle and was kind of a head case, and we're like, well, maybe Dodie would, So Dodie was the first Olympics coach with Tanya, and she told Tanya, skate out there, don't do your triple. You can win this Olympics. And then Tanya went out and flailed on the triple, fell down, and then melted down and didn't. Anyway, but my daughter continued skating through. She broke her ankle. She kept on it. The skating rink here in town closed or went through this whole process. And I would drive with her early in the morning to Vancouver, Washington, so she could skate for 45 minutes.
That's pretty far from here, right? That's across the river from Portland, right?
Yeah, she would learn. She would take her lessons. She learned to drive by me falling asleep on those drives, and I go, like Trump saying in his court cases, I'm awake, I'm just focusing. But I would, we'd get 15 minutes up the freeway, and I would sleep till we got to Vancouver. Go, I was awake the whole time. But she kept on the skating. She made it to senior level lady skater. Even though she didn't pass those tests when she was younger, she kept on them through college, and she finally passed the senior level test. Competitions were always a struggle with her, but she went to she signed up for a competition like an old lady in a competition of kids, 19, 20-year-olds, and she's, up there in years, and comes back and skates, and it was on Peacock Channel, Andy Andrist, senior level skater. I think she just did one competition, even though she got last place, just to go, so that's pretty cool.
But she's got a TV credit.
Yeah, she's got a TV credit, and she now she coaches little girls and
skating.
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
Deals with the same shit that she put us through or her coaches through. I had a rule that didn't really stick, but I would be like, no crying at the rink. It's impossible for a little girl not to cry at the rink, but especially didn't want her to cry during competitions. It's like if you were in a comedy competition, you're like, fucking Rhodes and Hedberg in front of me, and you cry. And it tells them you think that you did better, or that was the kind of one of the things. The competitions would always end in not as well as she'd hoped or whatever. So that was the psychology of it, and it was cool that we, as parents, didn't put pressure on her and give her any problems on it, and she's able to use lessons she learned, from us or different coaches, and is continuing with it to this day. So that's pretty cool. I mean, if I would have been on the road and missed, I could have missed a lot of that and been, I could have been a different father, but I don't think I would have gotten what I got out of it by being on the road more.
Well, I mean, your life is a victory. You passed on your DNA, and you raised another human to adulthood,
and then when it really mattered, when I got diagnosed with the stomach cancer, she was there with me, and she kind of wouldn't let me go down any dark tunnels that it was like, I told her right away because she was going to be getting married, later that year, and I said, oh man, I'm not even going to make it to your wedding. And then I said, they do great things with holograms. So maybe they could kind of, but I even the darkest tunnels I tried to go down, she would like, you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay. And if you're not, we'll deal with it. So I was like,
so how many years ago was this?
2 years.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing your posts on Facebook and so it's stomach cancer is what?
Yeah, I had pancreatic cancer, and they did this major surgery, and then I went through chemotherapy that lasted for, most of a year. And
that's pretty horrendous, right?
Yeah. It was my
sister had breast cancer, and I went with her to the chemo sessions like 5 times, and it's just so heavy seeing all these and people.
I kind of liked that I was going through it during the pandemic because everybody was masked. There wasn't a lot of chatter in the room, which I kind of like because it just felt like kind of a sad, somber, you got a warm blanket and you got these fucking deadly chemicals leaking into you.
Yeah.
That I took, and it to create creativity, and it just a lot of shit just kind of went away for a while. It took, better part of about a year away from chemotherapy before I really had any kind of spark of, I should, I did do a podcast in there.
Are you still getting chemo, or is it?
No, it's done. I'm 2 years removed, almost 2 years removed from chemo.
Okay. So your health is good.
Yeah, it's good, and I don't have, I just had a C scan, so each one of those I get nervous and think, oh fuck, this is, because it's an aggressive form of cancer,
Right.
and life expectancy ain't good or whatever. But I was like, okay, well, I just haven't been optimistic about it. But now it's like, well, I'm kind of, turning a corner. So it's like, originally I was thinking, well, I'll just wait for cancer and then jump off of a cliff with a windsuit and smash into a rock and go, he cheated cancer, But now I'm not so sure that's, maybe I won't. Doesn't windsuiting look like it would be something you could maybe catch on to?
Like paragliding type thing?
Yeah, it's like, but it's just a suit where you just kind of flex.
Where you got wings on your arms?
Kind of wings, and you just jump off a cliff and you kind of flex. And if if you're good at it,
and then if you just go straight down, who
but
cares,
some people,
right?
I'd be the type of guy who would like try to thread the needle on something and smash into it like a Wile E. Coyote type of thing. But now, as my daughter said, I got to quit doom scrolling because I'm not going to die. Or you're not going to die as soon as you thought you were. So you got to quit doom scrolling and start living again. And it's like, wow, I kind of had, it took me out of being, doing daily kind of exercise. It took, it's like easy to lay back. You're more susceptible to the cold. And I guess that's where I consider the fight of cancer is you don't fight while you're dealing with cancer. You fight afterwards. For me, it's like is trying to think about living again was even harder than like dying. I came to terms with and could factor in. And it's like, okay, I want to do this and this. That living is like, fuck, now I got to worry about Social Security. I guess I better vote again.
Taxes,
and, taxes and all that shit.
And so, what perspective did you get out of this?
Like, I don't take.
You must cherish your relationship with your daughter.
I take those moments and I find that I sit back in moments where I may not have appreciated them before and just go, oh fuck, because that at the end of it is your health could turn and you may not have that moment again where you're just at the beach where you're in good health where everything's okay, and I don't really feel like I get shook. And is worked up. Maybe a little bit of passion is affected by that, but I feel like I'm in a more stable place where I just kind of roll with the punches on things. And maybe before you I think I was fighting against the stream in some shit in life, and some things. It's like fighting against the current, and now I'm just
in what way?
Just against like, man, I don't have a schedule put together. I'm not doing, I should be doing better, or it's just, and then it's like, at the end of it, you get struck by lightning or you got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer or you overdose on drugs. You just fucking lay down and that's it. And you can't do anything to improve your draft picks or whatever. It's so, I kind of came to terms with what if that was it? What if that's the end of it? Well, it's a pretty good place, and if you can look back and go, well, I had some bad cards dealt, but I did pretty good, and I raised a pretty great kid, and that, as opposed to, man, I should have a fuller schedule, I should,
So you don't really give a shit about.
Having to give a shit, giving a shit is something I'm working towards again. I don't know where it was before I got cancer, but cancer I did not like jump on a Warren Zevon type project at the end. I was ready to face death full on and just be good with where it was. I wasn't, trying to, like I said, improve my draft or whatever. Oh, well.
Well, right now we're in Eugene, Oregon, and we're between shows at Olson Run Comedy Club. And you sent me a message on Facebook and said, hey, they've opened this new club here in Eugene. You should get on this. And that's how I booked this room. And I remember the last time I played in Eugene, like 7-8 years ago, and you had, connected me with that gig. Yeah. So watching you tonight, the first show, and you talked about your cancer experience. Mm-hmm. And so anytime I've ever seen you perform, you're always very honest talking about what's happening in your life at that moment.
Right.
And I find that really admirable.
Well, that's kind of my, why I'm stuck. Well, it's right now, that's what I'm working on. It's like, I got to find a way to frame this cancer, which I didn't have a note about it, but like I did have the list of people that I, wish cancer on or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a hobby while sitting in the chemo chair, because it is like everything.
Is the list of people you would wish cancer on?
Yeah, well, I heard a lady say that she wouldn't wish cancer or this experience on her own. It was like, because I didn't hear a lot in that room, and I remember hearing that and going, "Fucking bummer," fucking bummer. But and then I was like, well, I thought I could come up with a list of people. It's just kind of I'd come up with a few here and there while I was in the chair, but it got to be after 16 sessions, I had a long list of folks that would. Not always spiteful, but just for it'd be all right. Well, this, but I came up with a list, and that was like one of the things. Well, maybe I'll but just talking about it gives me a chance to move past it, I guess, emotionally or mentally. And if that can be 5 or 10 minutes of something, and then I can figure out the rest of how to write a comedy act again, which I'm far removed from, because it's like. Last, bunch of notes I have just seem like a lifetime ago. To go back and try to recapture some of that, I just don't, I don't have that energy anymore.
Yeah, because I told you I had witnessed a suicide, and I had a little joke story about it. Mm-hmm. And then I went through this breakup that affected me a couple years ago, and I had a, big dramatic story about that. Trying to be honest about these traumatic events that had happened to me.
Yeah.
And then I just felt like I was kind of bumming the people out.
Yeah, oh yeah,
yeah. And I really do want to entertain the people. And be a party clown.
Yeah.
I mean, not a clown, but just
no, it's
trying to have this emotional, deep revelation with the audience is.
That's why
it can be for me. It was. The purge wasn't worth the minimal laugh that I was getting.
Yeah.
So to watch you be so honest about this very serious topic, I admire that.
There's a couple. I mean, there's a couple of things that I have with that particular thing that I feel like I can build on, but I feel like. And how many more? I mean, I've done enough shows here now. It's like, all right, cancer guy. I don't want to be, but it's I like the uncomfortableness I get. It's kind of like that. Do you support the troops? I did in the Down and Dirty, where it's like this uncomfortable thing. And I like to, say I survived cancer. And then people will give a cheer. And they say, no, don't do that. You'll jinx it. Because it is kind of a funny, awkward, you really shouldn't, It's like I survived cancer and then go, all right, you got this, dog. No, man, that's not how this shit works.
Well, have you ever felt like you've been too honest about something in your life that happened to you? Like, shit.
Definitely on podcast or whatever. It's like, but it's like, there's a limited audience or whatever. It's like, it's like there's just too much sharing going on. I was thinking,
definitely.
It's like my dad. Was a content provider, right? He had one wife. He was with her. He didn't make a lot, but he was happy. And now his son. I'm a content provider, and it's the opposite of that. I got to go do weird shit to have a story or whatever, and it's the same fucking spelling, right? Content and content. So so I feel like there's. I kind of wish I lived in those days where you didn't have. I didn't have a podcast or blather out stories like, oh, I should be embarrassed about that being out there or whatever.
There's too much sharing going on.
Right. Like back in the day, there was like gossip, but you put your own gossip out now. Like it would be egregious to hear some of the stories that I've told on the podcast coming through town folk. It's like, whoa, what if that's in the Coke Hill newspaper? Andy Andrist gets drunk and rolled by hooker in Vegas. Oh, no.
Did that happen?
Yeah, just recently.
Recently?
Yeah, no, I got drugged.
But you're married, right?
Yeah, but I was in Vegas alone, sitting at a bar, and this woman who came up and offered me a drink. I took a drink, and I was I was drugged. Like she drugged me.
Okay, so it wasn't like you took her back to the room.
No. But somehow through her magic voodoo, she managed to rob my room. I think she worked with a partner.
Oh,
but it's like
and she got your key.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it was, but
You told her the room number?
I guess when I got drugged.
Wow.
Yeah, it all got, none of it got sorted out, but in the end, Vegas wins. And here's the thing I learned is I let my guard down. I was drunk alone in Vegas, and that is in the Fremont area, having a good time. But I got picked out by a pro, a lady who steals luxury watches and at times has hidden them in her own snatch. So it's I'm dealing with a magician.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just last week. So
really, I mean, that's quite an honest revelation on this podcast.
Well, it was it was kind of a bummer too.
What were you doing in Vegas? Were you working or just hanging out?
A friend had some extra mileage points and said, I'm going to hang out.
Come down and get rolled by a hooker.
Yeah, no, it was 420. I was on mushrooms and smoking weed. And I was having drinks at the bar. So you know how it is when you're and I have been drinking a lot. So I was drinking doubles. I didn't realize that. I didn't have my glasses. I'm drinking doubles. And then this lady, I wouldn't even say it was a hooker. It was just a professional scam artist who fucking spotted me as drunk and stupid.
This looks like a rube from Oregon.
A rube, yeah. I was a definite rube. That's what Prefontaine's coach called him.
A rube?
A rube. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
And he was the famous runner from
Eugene.
Oregon.
Yeah.
And how did he die?
He died drunk driving.
Okay, I thought it was a car accident.
It was a car accident. It was an MG. So those things
tiny car.
Yeah, and it was a weird
decapitation
spot.
mobile.
Yeah, if you haven't been up there, but it's almost like a glorified driveway where he flipped the car. He was obviously in the pints, having a good time, and then overcorrected for an animal or something and flipped the car.
Wow.
So.
And he was like the first hero of Nike shoes?
Yeah, well,
right?
early
70s?
The coach who came up with the design was, Pre was running in the prototypes. He would take them off a waffle iron, and then Pre would try
the rubber bottoms were made from a waffle iron.
Yeah, Bill Bowerman made the waffle design using waffle irons. And Pre, I don't know where Pre came. I think Pre died before Nike came out.
Can we call him Post-Fontaine now?
Post-Fontaine, yeah. Yeah. I was actually in one of the Post-Fontaine movies, Without Limits. I played a guy eating a sandwich.
You hand him water as he's in a marathon.
Well, Bill Crudup played.
Was he like a sprinter or he was a marathon guy?
He was a distance runner, 5,000 and 10,000 meters. Yeah, that was, and he was he was a Coos Bay guy who had an abusive German family. And this was a Prefontaine story that they didn't tell in the movies, but his old man would either physically or verbally abuse him, and Pre would take off running out of the house crying.
Well,
and that's where he got to be a good runner, not because he had an extra big heart.
So we're around the same age. Do you remember they used to have these? I think it was ABC, the ABC network. Mm-hmm. It was these after-school specials.
Yeah.
And the one that always stuck with me was there was this guy.
Michael Landon?
I think Michael Landon, he's in it, but they show him as a kid, and he peed the bed.
Yeah, I remember the show. Yeah.
And his mom, to humiliate him, they had a 2-story house, and to humiliate him, she would hang the sheets outside of the second-story window so that everyone in the neighborhood could see the big pee stain on the sheet.
Yeah, so he Forrest Gump on the way
So once
home.
the school bell rang, this kid would haul ass home, and he's jumping over bushes, and he's hauling ass before the school bus can pass his house, and all the other kids see the pea-stained sheets. And then the moral of the story is he ends up being an Olympic runner.
He should have
hydrated
a
sprinter.
more. If he would have hydrated more.
And it's Michael Landon is this Olympic runner, and I always thought that was, I don't know if it was a true story, if it was bullshit, but It always stayed with me.
ABC after school specials had to be at least 40% true.
So
they couldn't
if you have a child who pees the bed, humiliate them publicly.
You never know
and you got an Olympic champion on your hands.
Like Michael Jordan getting cut from the 9th grade team was his fuel.
Pissed him off.
Yeah. Ashamed of being a bedwetter. I would have just been like made jokes about it. Like, oh man, that's probably my old man went in the bed or whatever. Take the stain off of me.
I just read that Mickey Mantle pissed the bed until he was 16. And he was playing for the Yankees at 19.
Wow.
So only 3 years after getting his bladder under control, the guy he was playing in Yankee Stadium.
Wow. That's not bad.
So, if his mom would have been in the upper deck waving his pee sheets.
I don't think I wet my bed. I remember waking up and wetting like my brother's bed.
Yeah.
Like standing that was a weird phenomenon. Like I would get up and try to find the bathroom and pee on other people's stuff, but never my own. So I think I was pretty good that way.
You turned it into a game.
Yeah. I was the youngest of 4 or 5 boys. So
let's talk about some other so the Nike Corporation comes from here.
Near here, yeah. Well, I mean, the origin story is from here for sure, and
right, and it's all connected with the University of Oregon and the Ducks.
Yeah,
one of the cutest mascots in sports.
Disney authorized it back in the day.
Did they really?
Yeah, that's why they still.
Why they could have nixed it?
Well, I mean, they drew the duck up to look just like the duck, Disney duck, and then they kind of had a cooperative deal. I don't know if it was a grab on merch money or whatever, but for some reason that was one of those rare deals that Disney okayed.
So whatever happened to that guy with Phil Knight?
Phil Knight's still alive.
He's still alive.
Yeah, he's still alive. Drags down for his. Still puts a lot of money into the university. Like the basketball arena is named after his kid. I think he's still hoping for the Ducks to win a national championship in football. But he's an old man. The Olympic Stadium that's built here, if you get a chance to drive by that.
The football stadium?
No, the new track stadium. It's where the Olympic trials are every year now.
Okay.
But there's a tower there, and it's real beautiful. It's like a European stadium and a lot of artwork around it. But there's a tower that they call Phil's dick, or, some people, but it's a, real phallic symbol in the corner of that stadium and all. But yeah, Phil's probably in his close to 90 anyway.
Okay. And what else is Eugene, or was Ken Kesey from here? Because there's the Kesey Square.
Kesey lived in Pleasant Hill near here, and his kid wrestled for the U of O. And Mount Pisgah, there's a memorial, because Ken Kesey's kid that wrestled here was involved in a van crash that killed him and other wrestlers. So Kesey's, his touches around here. Animal House, the movie was filmed in Eugene, is another thing. And Belushi's Jim Belushi.
John Belushi.
John Belushi was here for Animal House. Jim Belushi has now opened Animal House weed place now.
Oh, okay.
That's like the first thing.
Now, wouldn't Belushi, he would go off and party with students and wake up in
Belushi
different fraternity houses and stuff?
He had a lot of different places where he also, during that time, went down and jammed with Curtis Salgado at the Eugene Hotel, and I think that's where the idea of the Blues Brothers sprang from. That, because Curtis Salgado was very much like a blues brother. He wore the shades and the suit and all that. And then Aykroyd came out, and then Belushi and Aykroyd took a cross-country trip in a Volkswagen van with a lot of music Curtis Salgado put together for him to listen to and shit. So I think that by the time they got to New York, they had the Blues Brothers.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't, he grew up in Wheaton, Illinois, outside of Chicago.
Yeah,
I thought it was
maybe some of
Chicago blues scene.
But he came, the story I heard is he came down to, he was filming Animal House, and Salgado was doing this weekly thing at the Eugene Hotel. And so Belushi came in. He didn't know who he was, but he wanted to do a song, and he did Joe Cocker He did.
Yeah, and then he did that.
Yeah,
on
he did
SNL,
a beautiful.
one of his
Yeah, he did a
famous
perfect
skits.
Joe Cocker, and then they were probably up the stairs smoking weed between stuff. And Salgado was like, "Well, do you do anything to like you?" And then he went out and did a blues number or two. And I think if he didn't have it in him before that, the Blues Brothers might have hatched right here in town.
Well, so I was talking about Ken Kesey, the electric Kool-Aid acid test. I remember reading when I moved to San Francisco, and then when I had my sitcom, Mr. Rhodes, and I played an English teacher. One of the big I taught the kids electric Kool-Aid acid test, and that was like a big controversy because it was a private school and rich kids. But the book that really hit me, and I think it's the quintessential Oregon book, is Sometimes a Great Notion.
Yeah.
That's such a classic Oregon story. And then there's a movie with Paul Newman. The book is still phenomenal, and the movie is still phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then I was telling you how next month I'm going to go to Pendleton to see Charlie Crockett play at this roundup thing.
Pendleton Roundup.
So it's like a rodeo?
Yeah, it's a rodeo. I've never been there for it, but I read a book that was Ken Kesey and Ken, a local historian, but they wrote this book called The Last Roundup about a famous, Indian and black cowboy that participated in the last roundup. So, so I gave Tom a book recommendation that he'll enjoy going into to the Pendleton Roundup. I guess it's
I'm going to read it.
Yes.
And you told me there's this used bookstore here called Smith's
Bookstore.
I'm going to go there tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it's right around the corner here.
And hit it. What other fabulous things can you tell me about Eugene or Oregon that people should know?
The thing I like about it is, I get it when I go visit my daughter in Colorado, go on all these hikes and stuff. And, there's a ton of stuff to do in Colorado. I forget how many great hikes there are around, Oregon. You can go you can hit coastal trails and you can hit mountain trails. And, that's what I like about Oregon is it's green and you can get to
the air is so fresh.
Yeah. And you can get to the ocean in 2 hours or less, from here. And, I don't go up to Portland. Portland to me is, too far north anymore. But,
it's only 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's 2 hours. And I haven't been up there since, it's like I said in the tonight's thing is I feel like I'm kind of the last guy out of the pandemic because I had the shutdown and all that, and then cancer and all that, and I just I'm slowly getting back into doing stuff like going to the cities.
Well, what's your favorite thing about Oregon? I mean, you said the
It's
hiking and the.
it's just all I've known as far as like where I've lived. I've only, sampled other places, but as far as other places and stuff, I feel like I have what other people seek. And like you go to a Montana or a Colorado, I have a lot of that here in Eugene. So, yeah, I think it could be a lot worse. So. I liked it how accessible all of the nature and everything is here.
I like it, and I'm really glad we had this chat. Now we have to go back and do our second show at Olson Run. In closing, is there any words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to give to the people of the earth?
Just enjoy the moment. I guess that's it. And don't blame Tom for stealing my shoes because he did not steal my shoes. I probably misplaced them, and I was having a bad reaction to the drugs I was on. So sometimes don't let your bad trip ruin somebody else's good trip.
But it's been a really funny running joke for 20 years, and I wanted to end this podcast by giving you these brand new Nikes.
There they are.
Actually, no. I got you some Adidas.
Well,
I want you to change your brand.
If you gave me shoes, then I would suspect it even more. It's like he's making up for it.
No, that's really cool, man. And you've always been a great guy. And I really appreciate your friendship, Andy.
Oh, I appreciate yours too, Tom.
Long may you run, my brother. Yeah, no, and thank you for, reaching out to me and setting me up with gigs in Eugene. Because, since the last time I saw you, I've fallen deeply in love with Oregon. Mm-hmm. So I really love coming up here.
Yep. So I'm glad you're here, sir.
All right, my brother. Long may you run. Long may you run.